folks, it's Wanda here at Calico Crossing, and I'm here today to give you a little tip and trick on following the directions on the Cabin by the Lake Block of the Month project. So I assume that if you're with me, you're here because you are joining us for the Cabin by the Lake Block of the Month. It is a 10-segment block of the month, and it is so fun. I'm still in the process of piecing the sample, and I'm having a great time with it. So our first segment of this quilt is the mountain blocks, and you can see them right here, those 3 mountain blocks. So that's going to be the first segment that we're working on. But what I want to go over with you today is how this pattern wants you to create these blocks. So it's really simple, but it's something that you don't see a lot in patterns, and so I just wanted to make sure that you understood how this went. Okay, so on the first page of your pattern packet, it gives you, of course, what is included in your kit, and you know, as usual, we cut those things, the majority of them, for you, so you don't have a whole lot of cutting to do. And then it tells you how to piece from there. Included in your kit each month, you will get a fabric key telling you what fabric we cut for each part of your blocks that you're working on, okay? In this Block of the Month program, you'll be doing multiple blocks in each segment. This particular segment has 3 blocks in it, 3 mountain blocks that you'll be piecing this month. So what it tells you to do is it tells you to take your 2 3-inch squares. Now, these are not the fabrics that go in the quilt. This is my sample, okay? So you're going to place your 2 3-inch squares together, right sides together, okay? No, nothing new about that. Then you're going to take your straight edge and you're going to mark a diagonal across the center of this block, okay? So from point to point across the center. Now, I don't recommend using a Sharpie marker, you know that. Use something that is maybe not quite so intrusive. You're going to cut on this line, so it doesn't necessarily have to be chalk or a friction pen, but you do want to use something that isn't a Sharpie marker, because I tend to get Sharpie marker all over me. Anyway, so I've used a Sharpie so that you can see, and I have literally used a straight edge, very important, to mark from one point diagonally across to the other. Now, you are going to sew 2 seams on this square. You're going to sew 1/4 of an inch on this side of the seam and 1/4 of an inch on this side of the seam, okay? So I've already done one of those so that you can see it, and of course I did it in this lovely black thread so that you can see it well. Here's our center marking line, 1/4 of an inch on this side, 1/4 of an inch on this side. Now, you want to make sure, as we always do, that you set your seam by pressing it before you go any further. It's a really big deal when you're working with diagonals, things that end up on the bias, because of the stretch you get when you turn things on the bias or on the diagonal, okay? Once you have set that seam, you want to stop and cut right down your marking. Now, you can do this with a pair of scissors just like I have, or you could certainly put it on your cutting board and zip right through it with a rotary cutter. It doesn't really matter, whatever works for you. I typically am sitting at my machine, and to get up and cut it with the rotary cutter on the mat might not be so convenient, so I keep a pair of scissors nearby. So what you end up with then is 2 half-square triangles, okay? So out of those 2 3-inch blocks, you end up with 2 half-square triangles, and you just want to press those flat, okay? Now, I'm trying to see, it says, it says press towards the dark is what its recommendation is. You know, you can press towards the dark, or you could certainly press this seam open. I'm getting where I like to press my seams open a little bit more because the it reduces the amount of bulk, especially when you have multiple pieces in a block like this. So if you can choose to do it however you like, but my personal opinion is to press that seam open, okay? So it's your call. And then certainly go back and trim off our little puppy dog ears here, because they just add bulk and make it a little bit more difficult to see. That didn't, yeah, it did. Kind of see what you're doing when you start putting it together. So it gives you two very nice half square triangles. Now, the pattern goes on from there. Make sure that you press front and back of this so that you have your blocks completely pressed open. Okay, and let me get the other one done as well here. Okay, gonna press this open, and then I'm gonna flip it over, press it on the other side. Okay, and once again, I'm gonna trim my little puppy ears off. They just get in my way. Okay, now, so half square triangle minus the black thread. Okay, now then my directions tell me to trim each half square triangle into a 2.5 inch square, making sure that the diagonal seam is in the center of the square. So just made this out of 2 3-inch squares. How big is it? It is more than 2.5 inches. Okay, so they want a 2.5 inch square, half square triangle. Now, I'm going to see if I can show you this a little bit better. If you can see my ruler, do you see where the diagonal line is on my ruler right here? I want to place that diagonal line on the diagonal line of my half square triangle. Okay? So, I'm going to place that diagonal on the diagonal of the half square triangle. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I have fabric on the outside of this edge. On the outside of this edge, there's fabric past the 2.5 mark on both sides. Okay? As long as my line is on that diagonal, then I'm ready to trim. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to trim off the side. And I'm going to trim off the top. Get those little hairs out of the way. Then I'm going to flip it. Okay? So I flipped it. What did I flip? There we go. I flipped it completely around. So it was like this, okay, and I took this point and turned it all the way around. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my diagonal line on the diagonal of my block again, but this time I'm going to match and make sure, let's see how I can get this to you. Make sure that I'm on the fabric edge with my 2.5 inch marking on my ruler right there. And then I'm going to trim off whatever is on the top and the right hand side again. And what I end up with is a perfect 2.5 inch square, 2.5 inch square, half square triangle. Okay, so this is, it's, to me, when I first started piecing this quilt, I went, boy, is that a pain in the caboose or what? I've got to stop and I've got to trim all of these down. The blocks are magnificent. Okay, you really get beautiful half square triangle blocks to piece with, and as long as you keep your seam allowances accurate when you're piecing the block together, you're going to be amazed at how great your blocks turn out. Okay, so this is the way to follow the directions on this Cabin by the Lake block of the month. Get ready. You're going to be trimming a lot of half square triangle blocks, but they make your blocks amazing. People will think that you are so smart, which you are. Anyway, have a great time with this block of the month. I'll see you back probably each month, hopefully with a tip or a trick for each segment of blocks that we're doing for this cabin by the lake. Have a great time. Happy piecing.